450 matches, 364 goals, and 173 assists. These numbers define Barcelona's MSN: Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. This trio doesn't just win matches, but they mesmerized the footballing world. In 3 years, they managed to win 9 trophies, a historic treble, 2 La Liga titles, and were considered as one of the greatest trios in football history. But how good were they really? To find out, let's go back to the beginning. A Barcelona team so good, some players still dream of emulating their magic. Ronaldinho, Eto'o, Henry, Xavi, Iniesta. These players did more than dominate. They made football look like poetry. Barca were a force of nature in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and very few could even dream of going toe-to-toe with them. But all eras must evolve, a lesson every fan learns eventually. By 2013, Barcelona's golden generation was aging. The departure of Pep Guardiola in 2012 had left a void, and Real Madrid's resurgence with their own Galacticos was threatening Barcelona's supremacy. Believe it or not, there was a time when Barcelona wasn't at the very peak of Spanish football. In fact, by 2013, the club had gone trophyless and was struggling to recapture the magic that had made them the world's most feared team. Barcelona doesn't accept mediocrity. Something needed to change to bring the club back to its glory years. First, there was the foundation: Lionel Messi. Already established as the club's talisman and arguably the world's best player, Messi carried Barcelona on his shoulders through the transitional period. But even the greatest player in history couldn't do it alone. He needed partners, accomplices in his quest for footballing perfection. The Argentine wizard had been the club's beacon since 2004, breaking records and winning Ballon d'Ors with frightening regularity. But individual brilliance wasn't enough anymore. Barcelona needed to rebuild around their magician, and they knew exactly what they were looking for: pace, creativity, and ruthless finishing power to complement Messi's genius. In 2013, Barcelona made their first move in creating what would become the most devastating attacking trio in football history. They signed Neymar from Santos for a controversial fee that would later be revealed to be around 86 million euros. The Brazilian wonderkid had been tearing up South American football and had established himself as the heir to Ronaldinho's legacy of samba magic. Neymar's arrival sent shockwaves through the footballing world. Here was a player who combined Brazilian flair with modern athleticism, a showman who could decide matches with a single moment of brilliance. But more importantly, he was someone who could play alongside Messi without competing for the same spaces. A left-sided magician to complement the Argentine's right-footed genius. The partnership between Messi and Neymar was instant magic. Their understanding seemed telepathic, their interplay mesmerizing. But Barcelona weren't done. They knew they needed one more piece to complete their masterpiece. The summer of 2014 was when Barcelona completed their holy trinity. Luis Suarez, fresh off a controversial but brilliant season with Liverpool, where he'd nearly led them to the Premier League title, was the final piece of the puzzle. The Uruguayan striker, known as El Pistolero for his deadly finishing, brought something Barcelona had been missing: a pure, ruthless goal-scorer who could play with his back to goal and create space for his teammates. Suarez's signing for €82 million was controversial for more than just the fee. The striker was serving a 4-month ban for biting Italy's Giorgio Chiellini at the 2014 World Cup. Critics questioned whether Barcelona really wanted such a controversial figure in their ranks. But the club saw beyond the controversy. They saw a player with an insatiable hunger for goals and victory. When Suarez's ban ended in October 2014, Barcelona finally had their complete attacking triumvirate: Messi, Suarez and Neymar, MSN. 3 South Americans with completely different but perfectly complementary styles. Messi, the orchestrator and finisher; Neymar, the striker and pace merchant; Suarez, the workhorse and clinical striker. During the 2014-15 season, they scored a combined total of 122 goals in all competitions. The numbers were staggering, but the football was even better. This wasn't just about individual brilliance. It was about collective genius. 3 minds thinking as one. 3 sets of feet moving in perfect harmony. Under Luis Enrique's guidance, MSN didn't just score goals. They reinvented how attacking football could be played. Their movement was so intricate, their understanding so complete, that opposing defenses simply couldn't cope. One moment Messi would be dropping deep to collect the ball, the next he'd be making a run into the box while Neymar drifted inside and Suarez pulled defenders away. The 2014-15 season was when MSN announced themselves to the world in the most emphatic way possible. Barcelona completed the historic treble with goals from Rakitic, Suarez and Neymar. By accomplishing this feat, Barcelona became the only European club to have won the treble twice. But it wasn't just about the trophies. It was about how they won them. The football was breathtaking, a combination of technical perfection and tactical intelligence that left opponents bewildered. In La Liga, they overcame Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid to claim the title. In the Copa del Rey, they demolished Athletic Bilbao in the final. And in the Champions League, the ultimate prize, they saved their best for last. The Champions League campaign was a masterclass in progressive improvement. MSN started the tournament still finding their rhythm, but by the knockout stages, they were unstoppable. They demolished Manchester City, brushed aside PSG, and then faced their biggest test in the semi-finals against Bayern Munich. The first leg in Barcelona was tense, ending 3-0 to Barca with goals from Messi and Neymar showing their quality. But the second leg in Munich was where MSN truly announced their arrival on the biggest stage. Despite Bayern's desperate attempts to mount a comeback, Barcelona's front 3 were clinical, with Neymar and Messi combining beautifully to secure passage to the final. June 6, 2015. Olympiastadion, Berlin. Barcelona versus Juventus. The Champions League final. MSN's final chance to prove they belonged among the greatest attacking trios in football history. Juventus were no pushover. They had the meanest defense in Europe, led by the legendary trio of Chiellini, Bonucci and Barzagli. If anyone could stop MSN, it was them. The first half suggested they might do just that, with the Italian giants taking a surprise lead through Alvaro Morata. But class is permanent. In the second half, MSN showed why they were special. First, Suarez equalized with a brilliant finish, his first Champions League goal for Barcelona. Then Neymar put Barcelona ahead with a moment of pure Brazilian magic, collecting a pass from Messi and slotting home calmly. The final goal was pure MSN poetry. Neymar's pace and skill creating space, Messi's vision finding the pass, and while it was actually a Juventus defender who deflected the ball into his own net, it was MSN's relentless pressure that forced the error. 3-1 to Barcelona. The treble was complete. In their first season together, Barcelona won the La Liga title and the Champions League, showcasing their dominance on both domestic and European fronts. But while MSN were busy collecting trophies, their rivals at Real Madrid weren't standing still. The BBC trio of Bale, Benzema and Cristiano Ronaldo had their own claim to being the world's best attacking unit. What followed was one of the greatest rivalries in football history. Not just between Barcelona and Real Madrid, but between two philosophies of attacking football. BBC were more direct, more focused on individual brilliance and pace. MSN were more intricate, more focused on collective movement and technical perfection. The head-to-head battles were epic. In El Clásicos, the two trios went toe-to-toe, producing some of the most memorable matches in football history. While BBC had the edge in terms of individual accolades and Champions League success, MSN had the more complete team performances and the most aesthetically pleasing football. If 2014-15 was MSN's announcement, then 2015-16 was their masterpiece. This was the season where they reached their absolute peak, combining devastating effectiveness with jaw-dropping beauty. The statistics from this season are almost absurd. In the 2015-16 season, they were responsible for an incredible proportion of Barcelona's goals, with their understanding reaching levels that seemed almost supernatural. Messi was at his playmaking peak. Suarez was clinical as ever, and Neymar was beginning to show why many considered him the heir to Messi's throne. The season started with a statement. MSN weren't just content with winning. They wanted to dominate. The way they combined, the way they moved, the way they seemed to read each other's minds. It was football from another planet. One particular game stood out. A 4-0 demolition of Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. MSN were at their absolute best that day, tearing apart their arch-rivals with a display of football that was both ruthless and beautiful. Suarez scored twice, Neymar got one, and Messi orchestrated everything with the calm authority of a conductor leading a symphony. What made MSN special wasn't just their collective play, it was that each of them was capable of individual brilliance that could change games in an instant. Messi, by this point, had evolved from the right-wing terror of his youth into a complete playmaker-goal-scorer hybrid. His ability to drop deep, collect the ball, and then suddenly accelerate into the box was devastating. He could score from anywhere, pass from anywhere, and his vision was so good that he often seemed to see passes that other players couldn't even imagine. Suarez brought a different type of threat. His movement in the box was predatory, his finishing clinical, and his work rate incredible. But what many overlooked was his creativity, his ability to hold up play, bringing others into the game, and create space for Messi and Neymar to operate. Neymar was the wild card, the player who brought unpredictability to MSN's arsenal. His pace was frightening, his skill unmatched, and his ability to beat players in one-on-one situations was arguably the best in the world. When teams tried to double up on Messi or crowd out Suarez, Neymar would punish them with devastating counterattacks. The 2016-17 season would prove to be MSN's last together, though nobody knew it at the time. By now, they had established themselves as the greatest attacking trio in Barcelona's history, and arguably in football history. But football is cyclical, and even the greatest partnerships must eventually come to an end. The season started well enough, with MSN continuing to produce the magical football that had made them famous. But cracks were beginning to show. Neymar was becoming increasingly frustrated with living in Messi's shadow, despite his obvious talents and importance to the team. Real Madrid were beginning to find their rhythm under Zinedine Zidane, and the Champions League, the competition MSN most wanted to dominate, was proving elusive. The season's defining moment came in the Champions League round of 16 against PSG. The first leg in Paris was a disaster, with Barcelona losing 4-0 in one of the most humiliating defeats in their history. MSN had been completely outplayed, and many wrote off their chances of progressing. But then came March the 8th, 2017, Camp Nou, the night MSN produced their greatest performance together. What followed was arguably the greatest comeback in Champions League history. La Remontada, they called it. The comeback. MSN were absolutely sensational that night. Suarez scored the opening goal. Neymar was unplayable with his pace and skill, and Messi orchestrated everything with his usual genius. The 6-1 victory sent Barcelona through to the quarterfinals and reminded the world why MSN were special. But it would prove to be their last great performance together. Barcelona were knocked out by Juventus in the quarterfinals, and by the summer, everything had changed. Summer 2017. Neymar's €222 million move to Paris Saint-Germain shocked the football world and broke up the greatest attacking trio in Barcelona's history. The trio of Barcelona with Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, and Neymar had created the trinominal known as MSN. The reasons for Neymar's departure were complex. There was the obvious financial attraction of PSG's offer, but there were also sporting considerations. Neymar wanted to step out of Messi's shadow and become the main man at a club with Champions League ambitions. He wanted to win a Ballon d'Or, and he felt that staying at Barcelona would make that impossible. The impact of his departure was immediate and devastating. Barcelona had built their entire attacking philosophy around the interplay between Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. Without the Brazilians' pace and unpredictability, they lost a crucial dimension to their play. During their time together, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar combined to play a staggering 450 games for Barcelona, scoring a combined 364 goals in 3 seasons together, which comes down to an impressive average of 0.81 goals per game. But MSN's legacy goes beyond mere statistics. They represented a philosophy of football that valued technical skill, collective intelligence, and creative expression. In an era where football was becoming increasingly physical and direct, MSN showed that there was still room for artistry and finesse. Commonly known by the acronym MSN, the trio were sensational during their short 3-year period at Camp Nou, winning 2 La Liga titles, a Champions League title, and 3 Copa del Rey titles, and the Club World Cup. Their football was poetry in motion, a combination of South American flair and European tactical sophistication that produced some of the most beautiful goals and team moves ever seen. They didn't just win matches, they won them with style, with panache, with a joy that reminded everyone why they fell in love with football in the first place. After MSN broke up, each player continued their career in different directions, but none would ever quite recapture the magic they had created together. Messi remained at Barcelona until 2021, continuing to break records and win individual awards. But the team never quite reached the same heights without his Brazilian partner in crime. His departure to PSG in 2021 marked the end of an era at Camp Nou. Suarez stayed at Barcelona until 2020, remaining a prolific goal scorer, but gradually losing the explosive pace that had made MSN so devastating. His controversial departure to Atletico Madrid, where he immediately won La Liga, only served to highlight how much Barcelona had lost. Neymar's journey at PSG has been a mixture of individual brilliance and collective disappointment. Despite his incredible talent, he has never quite managed to lead PSG to Champions League glory, the prize that drove his departure from Barcelona in the first place. MSN lasted only 3 seasons, from 2014 to 2017. But in that brief time, they created magic that will be remembered forever. The MSN trio was perhaps the best attacking triumvirate ever assembled. 3 players at the peak of their powers, playing for one of the greatest clubs in football history under a coach who understood how to maximize their talents. Their breakup remains one of football's great what-ifs. What if Neymar had stayed? What if they had been given more time to develop their partnership? What if Barcelona had built a stronger team around them? We'll never know the answers to these questions, but we'll always have the memories. The memories of Messi's impossible passes, Suarez's predatory finishing, and Neymar's magical dribbling. The memories of that treble season, of La Remontada, of El Clasico demolitions. The memories of 3 South American magicians who, for a brief shining moment, showed us what football could be when played by artists. MSN wasn't just an attacking trio. They were a statement that football is an art form, that technique and creativity still matter in the modern game, and that when the right players come together at the right time, they can create something truly special. They may have only lasted 3 seasons, but those 3 seasons were enough to secure their place in football immortality. MSN, Messi, Suarez, Neymar. The Barcelona Trident. The greatest attacking trio that football has ever seen, and perhaps ever will see. Birds fly, grass grows, MSN created magic. It's just a fact of life.